Hello, everyone. How are you? I won't be identifying myself to preserve my family's privacy, but today I want to share a very memorable story about my maternal grandmother, who passed away in 2012. This story begins with a dream I had at the end of March 2012. I dreamed I was sitting on the floor in my grandmother's room, and she was lying on her bed, as if sleeping. My perspective in the dream was very specific, almost as if I were a meter from the floor, just about at the level of the doorknob. Suddenly the door opened, and a man entered, elegantly dressed in an old-fashioned linen suit, but it was all pink, with a leather suitcase in his hand and a cane. He walked in slowly, approached the bed, and sat down at the edge of the chair next to her. In the dream, I had the strong feeling that this man was my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, who passed away when I was only 7. He used to wear these old suits, but always in white, never pink. However, in the dream, the suit was pink, and I knew he was there to take my grandmother. I woke up very disturbed, with a strong sense that my grandmother's death was very near. She had been quite debilitated at that time, and we believed she was starting to show signs of dementia. She had moments of lucidity, but every now and then, she would get confused. One thing she always said was that she wouldn't die until her first great-grandchild was born, which made me even more uneasy. My grandmother was excited about the arrival of my nephew, but she also knew her health was getting worse. On April 18, 2012, my sister-in-law started having labor pains and went to the hospital. On the same day, my grandmother, who was at home, fell ill and had to be rushed to the hospital. My aunt stayed with her while we were at the maternity ward waiting for the baby to be born. All day long, my grandmother's condition was critical, and around 11 p.m., my nephew was finally born. When my aunt told my grandmother, who was sleeping in the hospital, she smiled, but didn't say anything. By the end of that night, unfortunately, my grandmother passed away. It was as if she had waited for her great-grandchild to be born before she could leave in peace. On the day of the funeral, there was the usual rush of sorting through her belongings and deciding what each family member would keep. It was then that my aunt found a small jar with powder in it, and she asked me if I knew what it was. I didn't, and that's when she told me a story that really frightened me. When she was younger, my grandmother had lived in a neighborhood with many Umbanda terreiros, and despite being Catholic, sometimes she was taken by family members to these places. Once, a woman from one of these terreiros gave my grandmother an almond and told her that the almond represented her life. She explained that when my grandmother died, the almond would disappear. My aunt told me that, over the years, she had noticed the almond gradually deteriorating, and on the day my grandmother passed away, the almond had turned entirely to powder. That left me with a strange feeling, as if it had something to do with the end of my grandmother's life. Later, I learned about other coincidences. My uncle, who is very religious and deeply involved with the evangelical church, had received a spiritual message 3 years before my grandmother passed, telling him that her life was coming to an end. And, according to the message, she would have 3 more years of life, which turned out to be exactly the year she passed away. I also found out that one of my cousins had a dream that seemed to predict my grandmother's death. All of this, combined with my feelings of guilt for not visiting her in time, left me deeply shaken. I had lost the opportunity to say goodbye. However, a week after her death, I had a dream that brought me some comfort. I dreamt that I was in a large gallery surrounded by trees, and suddenly, my grandmother appeared, gave me a tight hug, and told me everything was okay, that I didn't need to be sad. She seemed happy, and that gave me great relief. This is the story about my grandmother's passing and everything that happened around it. I hope that, in some way, my story has touched you. Thank you for the opportunity to share it.